Hi guys, I am having a good day, and a lot of that is because I think I stopped wrestling God. Silly thing to say out loud, but it was a reality that was dawning on me more and more how much I was wrestling God in the change of my life, this job change, which has demanded a lot of my time and attention. Like a kid throwing a major temper tantrum and the parents just waiting them out. Like, I'm making this decision for your good. And when you finally stop throwing your temper tantrum, I think you'll be able to hear what I'm trying to say. And that was me for 3 weeks, just struggling with this change in my life that I felt like was kind of just dumped on me. And the irony of me saying that is that I volunteered for it. I love my church, and my church I knew needed help, and we couldn't afford a secretary. So I was willing to pick up this work and help out. But then the moment I realized the load it truly was, I was like a pouting child, missing my old routines. And I'll be honest, my old routines were beautiful. I was able to come to work and spend time first in His Word. And I could take my time and I could feel inspired and uplifted and hit my day, feeling like I had zeroed in on God and His focus and was running the course as I should. And then this job took over. And it was more like hit the ground running. You have no time to even take a breath. There were days I didn't even take a bathroom break or eat. I just kept going. There was so much to do. And I really hated it. I hated it. I felt like a Martha, and I wanted to be Mary again. But I say it out of context because this was something that I volunteered for because I felt God nudging me to do so. It wasn't just flippant. It was, you have talents in these areas for administration, secretarial stuff. I have been an office administrator at a preschool before, a manager, a co-manager, an owner of a daycare. I know what it takes. And I wanted to leave all that behind, but I felt God saying, you have these skills. I put you here for a reason, right? That phrase, for such a time as this. And even sometimes you love the idea of something like that, but the actuality, being in the trenches, is a whole different experience. And I found it to not be glorious, to rather be very task-oriented, busy. And I found that I had to find new ways to get God centered in my life that could not involve me taking my time in a devotion, but rather bringing Him into the very action, the very tasks I had to dive into. And all that to say, I finally decided to make peace with God, to accept what He did. I found this quote. It says, sometimes God stirs us out of comfortable situations in order to stretch us and cause us to use our faith. I was getting stuck in a very comfortable situation. My job was very flexible. I had ample time to pour into His Word, pour into research, make videos on this channel. And it got very comfortable, and it was beautiful, and I loved it. And then He stirred me right out of the comfort zone. All right, you've had time to dive into my Word. You've had time to research. Now I'm forcing you to put it into action. A lot of us love to just learn. We love to sit in our quiet space and just learn about God, become inspired, be spectators. And I wouldn't say we'd exactly say we're spectators, but it is very easy to become simply a spectator Christian, where you read His Word and you eat Him up, right? You love His Word. You love what He has to say. You love the conviction. You love the inspiration. but you stay in your comfort zone. And when he finally gives us a good shaking, like, nope, I'm removing you from your comfort zone. You're going to go and you're going to put this to practice. And I just think of Luke 10:2, when Jesus pushes his disciples to go out. Now, after this, the Lord appointed 70 others and sent them in pairs ahead of him to every city and place where he himself was going to come. And he was saying to them, the harvest is plentiful, but the laborers are few. Therefore, beseech the Lord of the harvest to send out laborers into his harvest. Go, behold, I send you out as lambs in the midst of wolves. And that was actually Luke 10:1-3, because I felt like it was really important to read the verse before and after. Because if you read Luke 2 only, you take it out of context, right? The harvest is plentiful, but the laborers are few. Therefore, beseech the Lord of the harvest to send out laborers into his harvest. If you read that alone, it's so easy to sit in your comfort zone and pray for God to send people to go out and reap the harvest. But if you read the verse before and after, Jesus is sending them. He's sending them. And in verse 3, go behold, I send you. I send you out as lambs. We are the laborers. He is sending us. And that is such an amazing calling, that he would choose us, that he would equip us. Because we know what that means. When we say us, we see the list of our weaknesses, right? I can close my eyes and I can see the list of my weaknesses, of my shortcomings, where my talents fall short. And then I also immediately think of people who are far more talented, who are way better at this calling that you are giving me, Father. So go call them. I'm going to pray to God for him to send them out to the harvest. But he's sending us. And we're reading this great book in our staff because it is time. You look at the world right now, where we're at. The church can't play church anymore. The church has been playing church for a really long time. And what I love about my little church here in St. Helens, these people are real. They're authentic. They have been through the fire. This church has been through a lot, and it could have broke them. It could have made them hold on to more of being just fake. But instead, they became real, authentic people, down to earth, who are choosing to follow God. And so we're starting this series about what does it look like to be real disciples of Jesus, because the church has gotten it wrong for a while. We're very consumer-based. How can our lights and our programs draw people in, rather than how are we shaping the people around us? How are we really bringing people to Jesus? So we're reading this book, and I encourage you to get it. It isn't rocket science. It is taking the Word of God, which we know if we're reading it, but it's putting it in practical terms, right? Taking the first century church and trying to help us in this day and age understand how we can look like them when everything is so different. I'll show it to you. It's called Empowering Missional Disciples. Really good. And I want to read a few quotes from it because it's been striking me hard right here, right in the midst of my struggle of, I cannot believe where I've been dumped. I cannot believe, God, that you took me out of my awesome ministries. I'm thinking of my prayer ministry, the YouTube ministry. I cannot believe I'm now just this Martha, tasks, lists, things that are just so impersonal. But he has opened my eyes in many ways to why I am where I am. And behind this camera are a ton of windows that help me see the children we're serving in this community. You guys, I literally drove to work yesterday, praying, God, I'm so bogged down that I can't even imagine being of any use to you, to the lost. There are so many lost people in our community. How am I any use to you? I am useless. I'm just Martha working in the background. And I immediately felt admonished because I pull into our parking lot and I'm looking in. He's like, oh, really? You have no chance to minister to the lost when the daycare attached to your church is serving over 100 families from this community that are broken, that are single parent homes. And not only that, but 70% of the staff that work at that daycare are not saved. The harvest is just waiting for you. I felt so convicted and so blind. Like all this time, I have now been more visible to these people by taking this job on. I see them, they see me. I hear them. I have the opportunity to go out and greet them and love on them, the kids and the staff. And all this time wallowing, I'm useless to you, God. I'm just at a computer. How can you use me? And him just shaking me, Jamie, open your eyes. I removed you out of your closet. And now you can see every day the ministry right in front of your face. The children that need you, the families that need you, the staff that need you. Because you've been there. I've been a preschool teacher. I've been a mom. I've been in a managerial position. So I know how even the director feels over there. I have all the tools I need to go love on them in a very tangible, authentic way because of this new job being added to my plate. Back to the book. I have to read this. It hit me square. It says, most of us feel unworthy of setting an example for others. But the truth is, people don't need a perfect example of Jesus. They just need a living example. They need us to get out of our comfort zones and be a living example of Jesus. We won't be perfect. His disciples weren't perfect. But we have to be visible. We have to be out and doing his word. Here's another quote, because it's some of our excuses that float up. Mike went on to describe discipleship as the process of inviting others into your own imperfect life as a living example of Jesus for them to imitate. Then he asked the second mind-blowing question. Do you have a life others want? Is it a life worth imitating? This question can feel so crushing. Is it a life worth imitating? When I go out and I love on the students, on the staff, on the families, am I even a life worth imitating? And that can make you want to run and hide right back into your closet until you realize a life worth imitating doesn't have to look perfect. You don't have to look like you have it all together. In fact, that kind of a life could be very repulsive. It can push them away. People already think Christians are full of themselves. But if you're authentic, if you are vulnerable, if you're loving and kind, and when you give of your time, you're not checking your watch, you're not making excuses, but you're present. Simply being present is such a gift, a free gift we can offer to anyone in a world that is about being dismissive, rushed, and selfish. We really don't have time for each other anymore, have you noticed? But taking the time to slow down like Jesus did. To slow down and give them your time. And to be authentic, to not hide your flaws, but to say, yeah, I've struggled with that too. It's really hard. That opens a door. That opens a door that pretending like you've got it all together would never open, because we all know we're messy. Okay, this next quote's a little long, but you guys, God is moving in my life. He is stirring me hard. He is pushing me into being a true disciple, because for a long time, I just loved him. And that is a great starting point. We are to love him and choose him and learn who he truly is and what that means for us. But then eventually, you get pushed out of the nest. Time to fly, time to do, time to act. Because his grace isn't just to save us from death. His grace is to change us. And I'm going to stop talking because this next passage is really great. Okay, it's a short story about this man named Dietrich Bonhoeffer, and you may have heard of him. Dietrich Bonhoeffer was a German pastor living in Berlin during the reign of Hitler, who, in spite of the Nazi government's ban against his teaching, chose to invest in young Christian leaders at the underground Finkenwald Seminary. Although a biblical peace activist and pacifist, he eventually decided to participate in the plot against Hitler's life and ended up paying for it with his own. He was executed by a Nazi firing squad 2 weeks before the Allies liberated his concentration camp. Bonhoeffer well understood the high cost of following where Jesus leads us, stirs us, forces us at times. But he was emboldened to do so by the priceless grace he had received so freely. This next part is strong. Bonhoeffer explained, cheap grace is grace without discipleship, grace without the cross, grace without Jesus Christ, living and incarnate. Costly grace is the treasure hidden in the field. For the sake of it, a man will go and sell all that he has. Such grace is costly because it calls us to follow. And it is grace because it calls us to follow Jesus Christ. It is costly because it costs man his life. And it is grace because it gives a man the only true life. It is costly because it condemns sin, and grace because it justifies the sinner. Above all, it is costly because it cost God the life of his Son. You were bought at a price. And what has cost God much, I would say yes, it has cost God much, cannot be cheap for us. Above all, it is grace, because God did not reckon his Son too dear a price to pay for our life, but delivered him up for us. And then the author goes on to say, it is true that discipleship is costly, but it is also true that God's grace overflows our lives with more than enough riches to pay that price. Discipleship is not a heavy burden that we must bear by our own strength. That's the biggest reminder. We always shirk away from it because we think we're on our own, right? We see the list of our failures, our weaknesses. We see people who seem like a much better choice, but we're not on our own. I don't know how many times God has stepped in and helped me. He's given me the words I've needed, or he's given me the clamp on my mouth when it was not time to speak. And I'm sure if you look back, you have those moments too. He does not abandon us. He goes with us, and often before and behind. So even when you put your foot in your mouth, his Holy Spirit is still working behind the scenes. Discipleship is not a heavy burden that we must bear by our own strength. It is the light yoke of a death that leads to true life. Jesus' call to take up our cross comes with a promise of an abundant, overflowing kingdom life. And then he says, I have found this to be true without exception and without fail. You guys, When you're in the season of wrestling God, when you're in the season of this is too much, I'm overwhelmed, I'm anxious, you don't feel that abundance. You don't feel that promise, but you got to hold on. Because I'm telling you, just a few days ago, I would not have the joy you see on my face. I am on the other side of wrestling God. But I'm telling you, it is much better to wrestle with him and struggle with him and face him and beseech him than it is to turn away. Wrestling him is a form of begging. It is a form of why. Why has this happened? Show me, help me, guide me. What's going on in my life? Why do I feel like I'm a useless Martha? And maybe your adjectives are way different. Your season could be different. But God stirs us out of our comfort zone for a reason. And man, do we want to go back to it. I long for my quiet office and just sitting with his word, just sitting with it and thinking over it and pondering. I miss pondering his word. That sounds silly, but when your life becomes a racetrack and everything has a timestamp, you miss the quiet. You miss the peace. But we're not to stay there. Those moments are important and you should strive to have them. But my fault was remaining in them, remaining in the quiet zone and never getting out, never going, never doing. And I'm just going to invite you to feel that conviction with me and get out. Get out. Shine your light. Imitate Jesus. Be the living example that no one may actually see unless you do it. What if you're the only imitation of Jesus someone may see today or tomorrow? What if you're it, but you decided, like I often did, to just stay in your quiet room and worship God, right? We sometimes hide behind our worship, behind our prayers, behind our devotions. When God sent Jesus, the word in flesh, the word in flesh, in action, in deed, in truth. He is a great example of what it looks like to worship and follow the Father in action. To be a true disciple of him is costly. It shouldn't be easy. It should be tiring. It should feel uncomfortable a little bit because, I'd argue Jesus wasn't exactly comfortable in his ministry. And I feel like comfort is something first world Christians seek after, and it is not exactly a promise. He promises life more abundantly. He does not promise a life of leisure, and we have got to let it go. We have got to let it go. And my version of that and your version of that can be very different. Wrestle with God. Wrestle with God like Jacob did, and don't leave until you get his blessing.